Okay, so yes, I'm very excited that we're doing our coaching. I'm glad that I get to work with you alongside. It's like bring me back into the 5th grade room, you know, like memories. But I want to tell you, so like one thing, right, I give feedback on my coaching, just like how I give you feedback, and I just want to be upfront from the beginning. One thing that I have to work on is low bar language. So what that is I notice that a lot of times I sometimes err on the side of making excuses of why things aren't at the level they should be. Okay. So for example, sometimes I'll be like, well, it's the day before break. Like, come on, you know, I'll say things like that. Or like, well, it's a Friday afternoon. Or like, you know, like making excuses. And at the end of the day, that's wrong. I shouldn't be doing that, right? Like, we need to believe that our kids can do things no matter what time of day or what circumstance, right? Yeah. We're always going to have challenges against us. So if at any time during our coaching you notice me using that, I want you to actually like call me out of that and help hold me accountable of like, Arias, you're doing that thing. Like that could be our like, you're doing that thing, and I'm going to do the same for you, okay? And I don't even know if that's an area that you feel you need to work on, but I just know that for me, I wanted to be transparent like in our coaching that I want you to hold me accountable for that too. Okay? Sounds good. So the way our coaching meetings are going to work is I will come in and observe like I did yesterday. Then usually within a day or two, I'll set up a time where we'll meet. We'll go through kind of what I observed, the things that were amazing that I saw going on in there, and then an area for that week that I want us to target to work on. Okay. And it's all centered around moving more kids to progress and meet goals and get to that level of rigor that we want to achieve. Okay, so it's definitely, we're a team together. I'm never trying to be like, and I got you. Like, I want it to be a collaboration of things that we're working on together, what we think will work. I want your feedback through all of it. If you feel that the goals we set need to be adjusted, or you know the things we're working on need to be changed, like it should be a fluid conversation for both of us. Okay, all right, so how's the week been going so far? What's been, you know, what's been a highlight of the week so far?
Actually, you know, I feel like things are getting back to normal. Like for me, it's just like a lot all over the place. So I think just getting back some consistency of being here and, you know, having the kids. And I think the switch that we made with one of the scholars was amazing.
Good.
And so I remember I had spoke to you about my afternoons being like the oh my goodness time.
Yes.
It has completely like shifted the culture completely. It's the best thing we could have ever done. And it is like amazing. I feel like learning is happening the whole day versus, oh, I'm getting so much done in the morning and nothing in the afternoon.
Good. Okay.
That's amazing.
I know. I feel the same way because, you know, I was out with Levi being sick. I was out in the beginning of the week and we were waiting for his test, and it's just so hard. And now I came back and I was like, oh, it's already Friday. And Steve was like, yeah, because you just got here. I was like, oh, well, the week's almost up for me. But yes, I'm ready to get back into normal and get back in the swing of things. So that's good. Okay. So this is kind of our agenda for our meeting. So we're going to go over 2 specific glows that I saw from yesterday. I could probably give you 20, but for time purposes, I'm going to focus on 2. We're going to talk about our grow area. Then we're going to actually do some practice together of what we want to work on based on that grow area. We're going to set some goals, and then we'll talk about next steps of when I'm going to come in next week. Okay? Next time, just bring your Eureka module, whatever we're working on. I don't know if you like seeing it on your computer or on the book better. I like going between both.
Me too.
Okay. So I have it up here. We can share this one together. I'm also going to give you your very own copy of our Skyrocket framework. So this, you've seen this before, correct? Okay. So this is what's going to kind of really base a lot of the things that we talk about. So strand 1, culture, strand 2, content mastery, and strand 3, rigor. Okay? All right, so let's get right into your glows. So the first glow I gave you was 1.2. Students are on task throughout your lesson because your classroom norms and academic expectations are 100% set, girl. I was like, in awe back there. I was like, I couldn't type fast enough. I was like, first of all, she has her scholars entering the room and they have trade in their pencil and have a sharpened one ready to go, like boom, setting up for success. You had 21 kids enter the room and 100% of them found their seats immediately and quietly. That was phenomenal. 1 minute after they entered the class, 13 out of the 21 had started the do now that you already had on the board. That was within a minute. You still had friends even walking in. So then I checked again 2 minutes after class had started. 19 out of the 21, which was 90% of your scholars, were working on the do now and working on it accurately. So that was phenomenal. You had it set. It's very clear. They know what to do coming in your class. Everything was smooth. So awesome, girl. I was like, this is tight. She's got on point in here. So that was great. The next glow is actually 3 points. Go ahead and flip to strand 3, girl. Your students were deeply engaged in your content because you provided those engagement opportunities. Allowing students to respond to each other was so awesome. So you had said, all right, we're going to bring it back. You had circulated, you said, we don't need to go over 1 and 2 because I could see from people's work that wasn't an issue for us, but we are going to need to look over number 3. I'm going to call students to the board to go up and solve, and I'm going to be looking for academic vocabulary. So you really set the stage. At 12:45, which was half hour into the lesson, you, like a boss, sat in the back and you were like, all right, y'all got to run the class. Like, they went up to the board, went up to the doc cam. They were showing how to solve the dividing a fraction by a whole number, right? That was the objective. And you had 8 different students go up to the board, and 8 out of 8 answered correctly and showed the correct steps for solving. You also had, after every scholar that went up and showed their work, you allowed the students to respond by snapping in agreeance, or you even cold called some students to individually respond to how they solved. Do you agree with how she solved? Do you agree, disagree? So that was amazing, Codes. I was like, this is definitely an element of rigor in your room, and that was really phenomenal. So what are your thoughts? What are you most proud about hearing that data?
The rigor.
Right?
Because that's, like, for me, that's the most important part in my mind. Because, well, obviously, first of all, having a classroom, in a way that can receive the learning.
Right.
But then once that happens, once that's good, then it's the rigor for me. So
it's the rigor for me. Very good. Okay. That's great. And I agree with you. I think you definitely are somebody who wants to really have that rigor in your room. You can tell the culture is, they're gonna go with you wherever you ride because that you have that on lockdown. So that was great. All right. So the area that I want to work on together, so you did have that engagement aspect that pushed the rigor, but I feel that there was some parts that were making the rigor lack in the lesson. So when we think about, the elements of rigor, right? We have fluency, application, and conceptual understanding, okay? So in the lesson, I didn't see you do the fluency part of that lesson. And I didn't see you do the application problem. And then I feel like in this lesson, you really had the procedural aspect down, but by taking out the tape diagrams, I feel that really did lower the rigor, and it took out that conceptual understanding. And I don't want to focus too much on this next part, but I wasn't able to find your lesson plans.
Oh, yes.
And maybe you had, Codes, a very good reason of why you didn't do the tape diagrams. Maybe you were like, you know what, I know that based on some diagnostic data, I need to do the procedural, and tomorrow I'm going to break this lesson in 2, and I am going to do the tape diagram. Maybe that was the case, but I wasn't able to see those intellectual choices, so I just need you moving forward. I don't want to do a coaching session on writing lesson plans because I don't feel that really is where you need to land. I didn't feel like we needed to do a whole session. I know you know how to write lesson plans. You just need to have them up so that I can see the decisions you're making, and then we can really move student growth based on the choices you're making. Does that make sense? Do you need support moving forward with lesson planning?
No, it's always in there. It's just the printing part I always forget to do. Always forget to do. And now that the inconvenience of the copiers,
with a copier
really,
down. And if you put them on, if you put them on the drive, I could look there too. I didn't see them on the drive. Did you put them on the drive?
I did put them on.
Oh, you did put them on the drive. Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe let's hash that out later of where, because I was looking under quarter. I looked in quarter 1, 2, and 3 under math. Maybe
it's in 2 because at the time, because I did 2 weeks in a row.
Okay,
together,
gotcha.
So I didn't. The folder wasn't there for 3.
Oh,
when I did. 3.
I see. Okay. So we'll just print them out for now, and then we'll figure out where you're putting it. Okay. Did you include that of why was there a reason you chose to take out the tape diagrams and the application problem and that's the fluency?
Well, the day before we had tape diagrammed out.
Okay.
And it seemed that they really understood how to do that, even though it did not, when you say that to me, the concept did kind of change. Mm-hmm. And so that makes sense that I should have just at least went through a couple of those. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was the reasoning behind that.
Okay. And that makes sense. I figured you had a plan of why you did it. Just I want to see, why you're making those choices.
Oh, absolutely.
So the data that kind of went along with why I feel that conceptual understanding piece was missing. So you saw me pulling. I did pull some students and interviewing. Here's some of you're like, why are you bothering me so much? I'm like, I'm doing a little interview. Now that they'll get used to me being in there and kind of being. That one student was so loud. He's like, I did it. I'm like, boy, is she teaching me user volume 1? Yes, I'm like, you loud as ever. Anyways, so let me tell you some of the stuff. Survey says, Licardo said, we're working on solving fractions. We dividing them. If it's 1/4 divided by 3, you basically just do 4 times 3. Josiah told me we're converting fractions. I take the 1/2, I times it by 8, I reverse it, and I get 1/8. Or 1/8, and then I multiply and get 16. Cameron said, we're trying to see how much it is. We take 1/2, divide by 8, we get 1/16. When I asked him, to explain, well, what does that mean you're taking 1/2 and divide by 8? He said, I don't know. I just know we keep the first one, we change it to multiplication, and then he was trying to remember the word reciprocal. He was using some words that he was like, we take the rest, the risk. And I knew what he meant. But
right.
Melody told me we're working on putting a 1 underneath a whole number to get a fraction. And then she said, for example, if we take 1 and if we take 1/2 and then take 8, put it a 1 underneath, and then times it by 1/8, we'll get an answer of 1/16. Terion, we're multiplying fractions by whole numbers. We multiply the reciprocal. He was the only student to use that word. We multiply the reciprocal of 8, which is 1/8, and multiply by 1/2, which is 1/16. Akaya, we're working on dividing fractions by whole numbers. She was the only one that referenced your objective on the board. 1/3 divided by 2 can be rewritten as a reciprocal, so 1/3 times 1/2 is 1/6. And then Jewel's is the last one. We're working on fractions and whole numbers. And I asked him, okay, a lot of times they're like, we're working on math. And I was like, well, tell me a little bit more, and they don't. They don't know what I'm really looking for, so they'll get more used to me explaining. But when I kind of try and push him a little, he said, we're dividing fractions. And then when I said, can you give me an example, he wasn't really able to give me one. So 7 out of 7 were able to explain the procedural step,
right?
But 0 out of 7 were able to really explain to me the conceptual piece of like, okay, if I had that, because then when they started working on that word problem, it was a little harder for them to understand. Like, they knew to take the math and do the procedural steps, but I think they're doing it just because, well, that's just what coach told me to do. That's the procedure, and that can be useful when it's fluency. Right. But for them to really understand, I think that if we would have brought in those tape diagrams even more throughout the lesson and some other differentiation pieces, I think we would have seen them be able to explain and conceptualize what they were doing a little bit more.
Okay,
so the thing I wanted us to kind of focus on this week is 2.7. You want to read them? You can read them. Is it too small? I know.
Teacher differentiates content, materials, presentation to meet the needs of all learners.
Yes. So I think that if we bring in, because I think it's good to have that procedural step, right? But bring in the tape diagram, bring in some other sources, I think they'll be able to verbalize and explain why they're doing what they're doing and what that looks like. What are your thoughts on kind of landing on that
that
area.
makes 100%. Yeah, that's fine.
You feel that's a good focus area.
Yes.
Okay, so what I want to do now is kind of like practice what that would look like. So what I did is I looked at your lesson for today. Are you doing 27 or are you going to do an extension of yesterday's?
I was moving on.
Okay, you are moving on. Okay, and you had good, I mean, the exit ticket you gave them when you set up that procedure run, I mean, we had, what, 90% of...
Yeah.
That was awesome. So I thought that was great. I was curious because it did say, you know, model with a tape diagram on the original exit ticket, and I was curious if we did that, if they were asked to solve that way, would they be able to? And I think that's why I want to work on this. Like, if we present both options and a kid chooses to do the procedural because they already understand it, like, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure we're giving them, right? We always learn, like, okay, you may be visual, I may be kinesthetic, I may be auditory. So by giving different elements of them to access it, I think it'll just push that rigor. So looking at lesson 27, so they're still solving problems involving fraction division.
Yes.
So the way I kind of looked at this lesson is looking at this fluency, I thought that this would be the best one of kind of reviewing, you know, dividing whole numbers by unit fractions and saying those out loud and understanding, okay, how many halves are in a whole, right? So to me, this would be the area to focus on for fluency as opposed to this.
Okay.
I don't know if you tend to do both in there, but I just thought this made more sense with what the lesson was.
So I try to pull, when I'm looking at this, I try to pull that out, and those pieces and components are become a part of the do now.
Okay.
So then when we're done, we talk about it, we go over it. And so it's like we're doing it, but I kind of have them work on it
independently and then talk about it. Okay, and that's great. That's fine. I think that's good.
Try to get something then that would lead them into the lesson that what we're doing. So,
okay. And I love that. I think a way to make sure that it's not just popcorn, like a few kids in it, then maybe at the end do the core response of like everybody, because you did that a couple times of like you'd call individual people, but I think we'll get those couple that weren't on task or weren't getting it if they do like more of that core response altogether. You know, I like how you have it up on the do now, but I think getting them to vocalize it will only increase that rigor.
Okay.
And then Eureka did this for us, but I think this is great differentiation, right? So this first problem of, you know, she bought 3 mini cakes for birthday party. So one method is using this tape diagram, coupling it with the procedural skill, right? So already we're hitting 2 different types of differentiation. And then a third way is we could use the number line, right? Of showing them even with the tick marks. So that way they're getting a couple different strategies of how they can solve, and they're able to conceptualize and visualize what it is they're breaking up, right? If we have 1 cake, there's 3 cakes, and she wants to cut them into 4s. How many people can she serve, right? I think it's nice that when they're counting by the fractions, that'll tie in here then. If they do this in the fluency of let's count by 4s. 1 4, 2 4s, 3 4s, 4 4s. It'll make it easier to draw the number line and understand how to break up the parts. You know, so I think that's probably why they included this part of the fluency where they're counting by, you know, the different fractions. I probably would change it to 1/4 for that example if you're going to stick to this one. But you know, tape diagram, number line. I also printed out, I don't know if you have these, but like sometimes even I think friends could have, if you had a fraction strip for them, like something to actually, okay, if I
had those.
Okay, you do.
Probably the ones that were in one of the lessons they had them, but it's not like that. It's not pretty like that.
Okay, well, then you can have this, but even if, you know, and maybe not everyone needs this, but if you provide it to them, maybe that's really going to click for someone like Josiah. And she's like, oh, like if I have a whole candy bar and I'm starting with a half and breaking it up into 4s, just having that tangible something may click for her, you know? Or those 2 friends yesterday who, remember they were like 1/40, well that equals 40.
Right.
Do you actually have 40 large chunks, or do you have, you know, I just think that visual would, again, help them. And then, you know, I'm all about the videos. So I did find, there's this video on Khan Academy. I won't go through the whole thing, but it does a really nice job. You know, having that tech piece included also can really make click for some kids. So This one I like because he does the procedural, but then he also draws it for them and shows them how to, you break it up into thirds and then we divide it into fifths. It's just another source of dividing a fraction by a whole number. I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I will send it to you.
Yes, I was about to say because we're obviously doing this.
Yeah. And then the
sometimes
last...
is nice for me too because,
yes.
like, tape diagrams for me, as I told you before, are newer. It's a newer piece. So sometimes when I look at them, they click right away. And
yes.
other times it's like, I really need to, like, look at this and do it a couple times.
And sometimes you're like, how do I set that up again?
Right,
and
right.
I'm right there with you. When I was teaching, my pet show would be like, you need to do a tape diagram. I'm like, okay. And so I had to learn that too. But it really does give them that visual to understand. And even though we maybe learned it the procedural way,
right.
I think you're going to see the rigor go up when we have different elements.
Gotcha.
I'll send you that. This also, I love vocabulary. Now this one does focus on the procedural, so I wouldn't lead with it, but it's a catchy way for them to understand. And they show, I have 20 fish, and it's the same thing as multiplying that by half. I'm gonna get 10. Versus if I take 20 and divide it in 2, right? It's the same thing. So it's just a fun visual for them. I'll show you a little bit. It's catchy, right? You never know. I still feel like I have songs from my childhood that I remember of, electricity,
oh my gosh, yes.
School of Rock,
yes.
And they have vocab cards,
Yeah.
Doing fractions, right? Anyways, I will send you this. We don't need to spend time looking at this, but just another way that we're presenting it in a different way that a kid could catch on and that could really click for them. Okay. So just thinking about, you obviously know the kids best in class of who might need what. You maybe know, like, oh, I know someone who's going to really need an example of a tape diagram. I'm going to, maybe you can think of somebody who really needs those fraction strips. Maybe it is going to be universal access and you give all of these to everybody and then let them, when they broke off into the small groups, maybe that's when you say, hey, I just know Josiah and that other friend were right next to me, so I could just tell that they maybe needed a little more something else, right, to really get it. And so maybe it's that at that point you say, hey girls, here's another example of another way to look at it. Or maybe Simmons is going to take Licardo in the hallway and they're going to watch this video and maybe he needs to see it a second time. So just thinking about how you can, differentiate it. Okay, so
that's the hard part.
That's the hard part, right?
Good work.
Okay, so what I want to do now is I want you to look at an upcoming lesson and I want you to take a couple minutes and think about how you might differentiate. And maybe it's similar to this. Okay. But I'm going to let you, do you like the computer access to your Eureka stuff?
I'll look at it.
Book? Okay. And then after you have a little bit of work time, then we'll talk about kind of what your thoughts are, how you could differentiate an upcoming lesson. Okay. Does that sound good? Mm-hmm. All right.
So,
Yeah.
So, like for me, so just looking at it, how I would think, and just correct me.
Yeah.
So the whole purpose of the lesson is to be able to take this division problem, so whole number divided by the decimal, and to be able to rewrite it, divide it as a fraction, which is back to what we were doing.
Yes.
So definitely making the connection to, to the lessons prior to.
Definitely.
But maybe providing the kids maybe a little bit of it's like a fraction chart somewhat.
Okay.
Because where it has it's a place value chart, and it has the fraction, it has so it would have the decimal, it would have the fraction, it would have all that information.
Okay.
Just to remind them of how to write.
Are those like those ones where it kind of looks like this, where it's like, 1/7, 1/7, 1/7 equals 7 sevenths, which is one whole? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's just like a place value chart, and it's just got all the places on it, and it's written in all the different ways.
Oh, I see. Okay, like decimal, fraction.
Yes.
Maybe. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Definitely. Another added visual for them.
That's one of the focuses of the lesson, and then our fluency practice here was going to tie back into knowing how many tenths are in a whole and whatnot. So just a big push on that area as well.
Definitely. And I even saw they give you some of that differentiation too with of how to even drawing it with the tape diagram. So just presenting it both ways.
Yes, I'm going to introduce diagrams.
And we can.
That's the visual.
Yes, definitely. And I feel like I always be like, I'm just gonna get to this part. But when I actually even showing it to them, presenting it as is for the model one, right? Like maybe the second step can be now you create your own. But at first showing them, okay, this is what this looks like. This is how it connects. These are both the same thing, right? One's just showing a visual way. One's doing it more of a procedural way. But I do feel that this helps them conceptualize it more than just this way. Even though, don't be scared of it. You can do it.
No, some of them I just off the top, but others is like, but for those I just do them ahead of time so I know.
Good. Okay.
Okay, so tape diagrams, giving them the visual aspect to connect the conceptual understanding, making sure they understand the difference about how the decimal and the fraction, rewriting the decimal and the fractions.
Yeah, it could even be quotes where you give a kid one of the ones from your notes. Maybe you have it printed out where they have that sample then right there next to them, right? Of how did she do that again? Okay, because some kids need that, right next to them of seeing your sample of how you did it. I know you model on the board too, but just having their own can sometimes make a difference too. Okay, well, you're definitely on the right track. I think that you are. Yes, you are. It's
digging deeper. It's okay.
You're digging deeper. Yes, I definitely think you're on the right track. And those videos I'm going to send you, Khan Academy, and to me, Khan Academy is a little more. It doesn't have all the flair and fun, but I think it's a good partnership with Flowcabulary, right? Because that one's a little more of the what are we doing? How's a fun way to hear about it? But then Khan Academy shows the why and getting into it. If you do feel you need the support with the tape diagrams, maybe part of your direct instruction is showing that video. That can be part of it.
That was the next question, because I was going to ask you about the actual lesson yesterday. I was like, did it go too long? Did I go too long? I thought that it was paced right for what I felt the kids needed.
I absolutely thought it was paced right. I just was wondering where the application, because I was like, we're already getting kids up to the board, and they were doing great with it, but you just, because those other parts weren't in there, I just was like, where were those other things? But I thought the pacing was great, but you just need to get those other parts in there, Okay, so a goal, so next time when I come in, I think having a minimum of, 3 different, a pen, at least 2 or 3 different types of differentiation, right? Do you think that's fair? Of different ways that you're presenting it to them?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, you think that's fair?
If this is a goal, I can meet this goal.
Okay, good. I want you to feel good about it.
So
Okay.
it's attainable, yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
So I'll come in. Let's go ahead and plan the next time that I'm going to come in. Let's take a look at next week. What day works for you for me to come in to kind of observe and check for that differentiation? Is there a specific day that?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Mondays aren't ever.
Mondays aren't.
Most favorable.
You're doing that thing.
Oh my gosh! It's not the favorable day of the week.
You know, Monday is just as good a day.
You just tell me when you're coming. I prefer that. I don't care to pick. Just
you don't
tell me when you come.
Okay. Let's do Monday 9:30. I'm gonna Come on, we gotta hold each other accountable, right? It's Monday is just as good a day as
I'm not
any.
gonna be here. No.
Don't do that. Watch now. Something's gonna happen. And you're not gonna be here.
And then I'm gonna feel so bad.
Stop it.
God.
Guess what? We are both moms. We're both family. We know things come up.
God. I should not have said.
You're fine. I'm gonna come in 9:30 on Monday.
Okay.
9:30 on Monday. I'm gonna send you a calendar invite right away so that you
I don't know. Can I also ask you to? I don't know how strict the protocol for the coaching session is, but could you also look while you're in there of different ways that I can incorporate the other body?
I knew.
Because that's
Yes.
that's hard for me in the moment when I'm planning. I don't really, because I always think about just how I'm going to do, you know. So I need to get into when planning to plan around how to use the adult. Because like I just heard you say, like at some point somebody can be pulled out and do this and all of this going on simultaneously, and I don't know that I think about that as far in advance or ahead of time as I should.
We can most definitely talk about that.
Okay. That's a me thing. That's not.
No, and we've talked about this before. I noticed that was something we could, talk about as well. And we can most definitely, when we have our grade level, let's address some of those stuff.
Okay.
Some of that stuff of how
but
we
that's
can utilize
that's
everybody.
A planning for me. Just
definitely. Right. And I think as you're doing differentiation planning, maybe it is that one of the differentiation pieces is that these two individuals during that group time, they're going to work with Miss Webb or with Mr. Bird and, or Miss Simmons or whoever it is. It doesn't really matter who, but these two scholars I know might benefit from a small group, going over some samples again. So you're right, it is a planning thing, but we can dive into that definitely more. Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so 9:30 on Monday, because Monday is just as good a day to have high rigor, right? We're going to hold each other accountable with that, because you do the same thing as me, like, not on a Monday.
I mean, it's not a favorable day, but okay.
It'll be fun. You can do it. We got this. Okay. You feel good about our goal. You already kind of shared. Okay. So, then I will send you those videos and the links and just basically what we talked about, just kind of written out for you to refer back to if you need to. Okay. And that's it. Okay. That's all. I'll be in on Monday. It'll be great. How did you feel about your first official coaching meeting?
It was, I mean, I feel like we do this all the time. Correct. So it's just there's just a few elements that was added to it.
Right. It's just a little more
like it.
Good.
To, because you always want to grow and get better and do,
Yeah. And it helps that,
I don't know, year after year.
It's you and me, girl. So that's more fun too. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate your time. I know you have to get back, so I will. Oh yes, this one's my copy. That one's yours. I'm gonna give you these. Okay. Just if you need them.
Yeah, this is definitely the first problem that I have up for us today.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
We'll have a great afternoon. We also have to talk about the incentive. I did not forget about that. It's just been. Remember, before Christmas break, both your classes 100% got Zern. Okay. So I wanted to do a root beer float party for them. Gotcha. So maybe email me some times that would work for. I don't know if you want to do it next week or I know we have conferences next week, so it's a shorter week.
Okay, that might be a good week to do it.
Right?
Who knows? Whatever.
Okay. All right.
You know, I'm always flexible and open to whatever time
Yes.
or whatever you want
And at our next meeting, I want to talk about what next year may look like.
Oh man, I don't want to talk about that today.
Well, we can talk about that today.
Look,
They gonna have to get out of our business for this one.